Okay, finally, this set is coming together. It's all clicking. Quick update from the last video. I decided, after all, to make this into a commander draft format, and it is the best decision I've made for the set yet. Everything's clicking now. I'm designing cards like gangbusters. I'm settled on the set mechanics. I'm really, really happy with how it's turning out. I should have done this ages ago. So in this video, I want to show you the final two set mechanics in the set. One of them is how TRIFORCES are working, which I showed off a variation of that earlier, but now I've settled on it. That's taking advantage of the fact this is a multiplayer format. And then the other mechanic is puzzles, which are an artifact type. And then that's it. And now you've seen all the set mechanics in this set, but I'd still love your feedback on them. I'm pretty settled, but I would love your feedback because maybe there's a better way to do this or a better flavor that I like more or whatever. So the idea behind the TRIFORCES is that there are 3 that you can get, and they are emblems. And they exchange control. Whenever somebody deals combat damage to somebody who has a Triforce, they can choose to steal one of their Triforces. And the way that you get them in the first place is you have cards like this that say claim a Triforce, which either allows you to steal an existing one or to create one that's not yet on the field. That's it. So it's very much so in the lineage of Become the Monarch, which is, this multiplayer specific card meant for the commander format. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card. Whenever a creature deals damage to you, they become the monarch. And it enters the game in the first place via cards like this that just say you become the monarch. Now, they get away with this very, very elegantly. No reminder text, very, very simply. I had to do a lot more work to get this to work in my set because there are 3 versions of them, and they have to enter at weird and different times. But I think it's intuitive what I'm trying to accomplish. And I think it's a lot easier to explain to somebody and for them to understand what it is than to actually explain it in rules text, which means that although it does take 4 lines of rules text here and 5 lines of rules text there to explain what's going on, I think mostly people are going to ignore that because they're going to understand intuitively what's going on with the mechanic. So what are the different Triforces that you can gain? There's the Triforce of Courage. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control. So most of the time, these are going to be creatures that attacked, but it also allows you to do things like crew with them or use them as saddling creatures or whatever. So there's a little bit more mechanical hooks there, but it incentivizes you to attack. The Triforce of Power says at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 black minion creature token with when this creature dies, proliferate. This is a token type that was already going to appear in the set. It solves a lot of problems that I want to solve in the set. So yeah, you get to make little minions if you have a Ganon's power token. And the Triforce of Wisdom says, at the beginning of your end step, put a shield counter on a creature you control. It was important to me that each of these be relatively simple, that they all have an end step trigger, that they're all relatively equal in power, but that they're idiosyncratic to specific deck strategies. So that I'm going to want to take, for instance, more highly the Triforce of Courage than the Triforce of Power, depending on which deck I'm in. That's intentional. But yet they're still valuable to whatever strategy you're in. They're still going to be useful to you. So that's part of it. And they each work with different sets of the draft archetypes, which I did not know this, but in Commander Draft, there still are, 2-color draft archetypes. That's important. And if you want to know more about that, I'd be happy to make a video on the 10 archetypes in the set and on the commanders that are designed to work with them, because it's been really fun to design that. So yeah, this is where the set has, the mechanic has settled. And I really like these abilities. I like that they work with each other. Shield counters can allow you to get creatures in to attack to put the 1/1 counter on them. I like that power works with all of these as well, so I can attack with my minions. If I also have the Triforce of Courage, my minions are going to grow. If you don't defend them, you don't block them. If you do, they're going to proliferate, so it creates this dilemma. And then, of course, the proliferating minion tokens work with both of these mechanics because these both have to do with counters. And so they all kind of fit together in this interesting way. Having one makes it better for me to get another one. They're going to interact with each other in this way. I think they're relatively equally balanced in power. This is guaranteed 1/1 worth of value. Let's ignore its condition for now. This is guaranteed 1/1 worth of value, which in some ways makes it the strongest. But a 1/1 creature is not quickly becomes not as relevant, right? And so being able to put 1/1 counters on my big stuff, if I can find a way to tap them, and potentially if I have a very wide board and I'm aggressive or I have unblockables, this is much better to me than power. And then wisdom is also very irritating for your opponent because it negates removal and it allows me to attack with them. It allows me to block with them. This is potentially a very defensive Triforce piece. So if I gain this Triforce of Wisdom and then at the beginning of my end step I put a shield counter on something, it's going to be very easy for me to protect and keep the Triforce of Wisdom, which is a downside. I don't like that about this, is that it's encouraging you to defend, but it is at the same time encouraging players to attack you if they can get through your shielded creature, because this is, you know, an ability that they will want for themselves and they don't want you to go gangbusters with it. With all of these, it's kind of true. The longer that your opponents let you keep the Triforce, the more out of control it gets. You know, now you have a bunch of, you know, chumpy blockers that when they die gain you extra advantage. Your opponent doesn't want you to get a lot of those cards. You know, same thing. If I can attack each turn with this, this can create an overwhelming board state, you know, if I'm able to do that multiple turns in a row. And same thing with this. Now I'm putting like 2 shield counters on my creature I really don't want to be removed, or my defensive blocking guy, you know. So I think that there's some fun incentive here. And, you know, one thing I also wanted is I wanted to make it so it wasn't just clear, like, if I have the choice, I'm going to always steal rather than take a new one, you know, because stealing means, like, imagine this scenario. You have an option on a card. Either make a 2/2 creature or steal a 2/2 creature from an opponent, basically, if there's like a guaranteed way that it was going to be 2/2 or whatever. Even though the power and toughness and ability of the creature is the same, you're always going to want to steal, because in addition to gaining it, you're also removing it from the opponent, right? That's always going to be better. But I don't want that to be the case here, so that when people have the choice to claim a Triforce, they're always just going to steal the existing one. I want there to be a reason why they wouldn't do that, apart from just they have an alliance with that particular player who has, you know, that piece of Triforce. Well, now there's a reason. Like if I'm playing control and I have no creatures on the field at all, this is not useful to me. But this very much is. And this is somewhat useful to me as control, because very often you'll have like one game finishing creature and this allows you to protect it. But this becomes like the obvious choice, right? Or if I'm playing Sacrifice, this is the obvious choice over these two abilities. So it creates a little bit of a dynamic of like, yes, I'm taking it from you, but I might want to grab one new one. And you're going to be more incentivized to steal if the opponent is winning, or in a 1v1 game, it would be much more clear. But in a multiplayer game, you know, the effect of stealing from your opponent becomes a little bit diffused by the fact that, you know, that there are three total opponents instead of just one, if that makes sense. So that's how the mechanic works. And you can either claim a Triforce or you can claim a specific Triforce, depending on the card. These are just test cards. Like it's, I obviously wouldn't have 2 versions of the same card. You know, these are just like to show off the mechanic and see how it looks on a card and whatever. I haven't been designing multiple cards with this, but this has been enough for me to see, yep, this does work. I think in general, I'm probably going to lean more towards claim a Triforce, but calling out a specific Triforce does make it easier sometimes to, like, you know, there's a little bit better of a flavor hook. It also allows me to modulate the power of it a little bit better. And also it makes more sense in terms of like, this is a very green ability and white ability. So like it wouldn't make sense for, say, black to gain this. But if I just have claim a Triforce and a otherwise purely black card can gain that ability, then that's a little bit of a color pie break, you know? And so being able, same thing with like just add a shield counter on a thing. I think red has shield counters the least. And so the idea of having a red card allowing you to gain this ability is a little bit of a color pie break. And so if I care about that, in those cases, I can have you claim a specific Triforce instead to get around that. In this case, I'm modulating in a couple of different ways. So if I'm allowing you to gain any Triforce, then I might have an additional cost to cast the spell, because that's potentially very powerful, you know, and just adding any Triforce ability on top of some other ability is quite a lot of extra benefits that you're getting. This way I'm modulating it by saying there's a condition on the card. So it's not always going to be true. If I'm casting this in response to my opponent's removal spell to get the hexproof part, then I'm probably not claiming a Triforce of Courage, which is good, because when I'm doing this as defense against a removal spell, there's sort of like an exchange of cards that are going on here. And if I'm also gaining a Triforce of Courage around it, that's probably not good. That's one way I'm modulating it. The other is the Triforce of Courage particularly gives me a counter on each creature basically that attacked, right? That's the main way to do it. But if I'm saying that in order to gain this Triforce of Courage, the target creature had to attack alone, then I'm modulating the benefit of gaining the Triforce of Courage, at least for this first turn. You're probably only getting 1+1/+1 counter out of it, which makes it a little bit easier for me to say you're going to get the Triforce of Courage, because it's just one little additional thing, and it's on this particular condition that you have to meet as well. So that's kind of the reasoning behind having both options in the set. I can either call out a specific Triforce piece or allow them to claim any Triforce. I think in general what I'm going to do is have these specific things appear at lower rarities, especially for cards that are really color-coded, and then at higher rarities, maybe multicolored cards, which there's not going to be a lot of in the set, it's just a consequence of Commander Draft, then I might allow them to claim a Triforce more generally, or maybe on colorless cards, or I'm not really sure exactly in what conditions I'm going to let them just claim any Triforce. But yeah, that's the thought there. So that's mechanic number one, the Triforces. I'm kind of happy with where it ended up. It's really cool how it's going to support, which commanders are going to be more excited about the different Triforce pieces. And I like the kind of political nature of what it's going to add to the game. I'm very excited about that. Okay, puzzles. Puzzles have been in the set. I've been wanting to include puzzles since the beginning, but at the beginning, I could not think of a fun mechanic that I was excited about. It was just an artifact type, it wasn't something that I was very excited about, and it felt very forced to get flavor to it. But then I thought, what do you do with puzzles? You solve them. And that's already a thing in the game because you also solve cases. So if I reuse that idea and that card frame, then I have a mechanic. And so this was the first iteration, and I'm starting here just to kind of make it easier to understand, which I'm just reusing the dissolve and solved. And then the thing I'm making unique about puzzles has to do with the fact that they're artifacts. And uniquely, puzzles always sacrifice themselves, tap and sacrifice themselves to gain some reward once they're solved. But I thought, I wanted to create a more interesting mechanical hook to this because cases are very hard to have mechanical hooks into. They're all typal hooks. If anything cares about cases, it's all having to do with types. It's not the mechanics of cases. Because like quests, cases have different solve conditions and they have different rewards for having solved them. So just like quests, it's hard to design typal considerations around them, which I would rather support, non-typal. I'd rather support something mechanically than typally, if that makes sense at all. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but basically, I thought about, okay, what if the typal hook instead is you can sacrifice a puzzle. Whenever you sacrifice a puzzle, you gain its reward. And you could either sacrifice it after solving it, or you can just sacrifice it to any other thing. So now, black especially, that often has the ability to sacrifice an artifact to gain some benefit, black will care more about puzzles, which is not quite flavorfully correct. Like, why does black care about solving its own puzzles in the world of Zelda? I'm not sure, but in any case, there's a little bit more of a hook there that'll make it more interesting, like to have a commander that might interact uniquely with puzzles. So I explored many different variations on how I could design around that, and here's what I came up with. Instead of solved, it says reward, and reward just means gain this reward when this puzzle is sacrificed. In this case, you draw 2 cards. So however you sacrifice it, you gain the reward. And then to solve, there's an additional bit of reminder text here that's particular to the puzzle type that says solved puzzles have tap, sacrifice this puzzle. So now you can gain the reward in 2 ways. And there's a flavor thing for this, right? I mean, do you see it? Like, what are you doing to the puzzle when you gain its reward without solving it? This was not the original reason I added this in the set. It was a mechanical hook, but it makes sense flavor-wise, and I think it's really cool. Do you see it? Because I think a lot of players are going to put it together without me calling it out specifically. What are you doing to the puzzle? You are brute forcing it. That's so freaking cool. I love that. This artifact type does not need to be in the set. The Zelda set is not incomplete without it, and it's not like filling a void in the set that's otherwise there. I already have lots of non-creature permanent types. Quests are also non-creature permanent types that have particular missions that they're sending you on, like this does. So it's pretty overlapping. I'm probably only going to make like 6 to 8 of these total in the whole set. They're very not needed at all, but I just really love like adding puzzles to the Zelda set for one. But also I love just the flavor of brute forcing puzzles, which is very Zelda. I mean, especially Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. But in all the games, you can brute force puzzles. And as a glitch hunter, sequence breaker, Zelda ROM hack maker myself, I really do enjoy when you get to solve a puzzle in an unintended way. That gives me a little bit of a thrill. So this mechanic I'm adding just for myself. The set does not need it. You guys don't need it. I need it. And it is a little bit more complex than cases, having to add these little variations here. But I think that's okay. That's what you often see when a mechanic returns, is that it gets slightly more complex. And most importantly, it enables this mechanical hook where I can have a commander that cares about this without calling it out by type. And that is really exciting to me. So these are the new mechanics. Let me know what you think about them. They've undergone a lot of revision and a lot of thought to get them to the place that they are. And even though they're not perfect, like I really don't like how inelegant and how much reminder text is required for this mechanic as compared to the Monarch. Even though they're not perfect, I really do am of the mind right now that perfect is the enemy of good. Like I need to get this set. I just need to make some cards and just like do it already, because I've been working on this set for years. And if I let this, this obsession of mine with like really meeting all of my goals all at once, it's just never going to happen. And that's not a thing that even WotC is able to do. They have drawbacks and benefits all over the place. If this were actually set by WotC, I know for sure that they would not accept this level of complexity. The equivalent that I can think about it is like the Ring Tempts You. The Ring Tempts You or dungeon cards are very complex. You can't even have reminder text. Like you need the token. Reading the card does not explain the card even in that case. So this is less complex than that. This is less complex even than Mutate. Although Mutate gets away with a less reminder text than this mechanic does, this is still less complex than Mutate. So it's not like it's impossible to have a mechanic that's this complex, but I think the reason why WotC wouldn't do it is the benefit that you're gaining from this complexity, I don't think outweighs what it's adding to the set, at least in a canon set, especially because it's going to make the set more complicated for newer players. But this is a custom Magic set, right? So like if a newer player is playing my set at all, it's probably because I'm teaching them and I'm there like as the designer to like help them out. So this is not like in a vacuum a real standard set. I can afford to be a little bit more complex in order to meet my own personal preferences and design goals with the set. Again, the inelegance, the complexity of this is not usually how I like to design cards. I don't like to force mechanics or flavor to the extent that it requires this much additional support. But once you understand the mechanical idea, which I think is fairly simple and intuitive, you're just going to ignore this reminder text and it's not going to feel very complex. You're just going to look at that and you're going to forget all the rest and kind of shorthand and abstract away all the rest of this, just like you do with sagas, that have that reminder text about their chapters and when they sacrifice, and all of that could be very complex, but in practice it makes it very intuitive. So I'm excited to play test with these, see what people think about them in draft, figure out how these mechanics actually play, and I would love your feedback. So let me know if you've got any. Thank you so much for watching. Also, let me know if you want to see what the 10 color pair archetypes are in this set and the commanders that I'm starting to design. I'd love to show those off too if you're interested. Catch you in the next one.